I walked out that Tuesday morning with my coffee mug in hand, ready to drive my brand new silver sedan to work. The sun was just breaking through the clouds, and I remember thinking how the light would glance off that perfect paint job I had admired every single day for the past 3 weeks. But the parking spot was empty. I stood there, frozen, staring at the vacant space like somehow my eyes were playing tricks on me. My heart started racing. I set my coffee down on the ground and walked around the entire lot twice, thinking maybe I had parked somewhere else and forgotten. But no, this was my spot, right under the oak tree where I always parked. My hands were shaking as I pulled out my phone and called my parents. Mom answered on the second ring. "Mom, someone stole my car," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm calling the police right now." There was a pause on the other end, a pause that lasted just a beat too long. "Oh, honey," Mom said, and I could hear something in her voice that made my stomach drop. "Your car wasn't stolen." "What do you mean it wasn't stolen?" "Mom, it's gone. We gave your spare key to Jennifer," she said quietly. "She needed a reliable car. You know she's been having such a hard time, and with the kids and everything." I couldn't breathe. I literally could not catch my breath. "You what?" I whispered. "She needed it more than you do." Dad's voice came on the line. He must have been listening on speaker. "You can take the bus. Jennifer has 3 children to drive around." I sat down right there on the curb, my legs suddenly unable to hold me up. "That car cost me $32,000, I said slowly. "I saved for 4 years. 4 years of extra shifts and skipping vacations and eating packed lunches every single day." "Well, Jennifer can't afford a car like that," Mom said, as if this explained everything. "You're single, Robert. You don't have the expenses she has." Robert. My name sounded strange coming through the phone at that moment, like it belonged to someone else, someone whose life made sense. I was 53 years old. I had worked as a nurse for 28 years, most of that time in the intensive care unit where every shift felt like running a marathon through an emotional minefield. I had raised my son David alone after his mother passed away when he was 7. He was 26 now, living his own life in another state, and I was proud of the man he had become. And I had finally bought myself something I wanted. Something just for me. "So you just gave her my car," I said. Without asking me. "Don't be dramatic," Dad said. "Family helps family. That's what we do." I ended the call. I didn't hang up angry or slam the phone down like they do in movies. I just pressed the red button and sat there on the curb in my scrubs, watching my neighbors drive past on their way to work. Then I called the police. The officer who arrived 20 minutes later was a young woman named Officer Martinez. She took my statement with professional courtesy, writing everything down in her notepad. "And your parents admitted to taking the vehicle?" she asked. "They gave the spare key to my sister," I explained. "Without my permission. The car is in my name. I have all the paperwork. That's vehicle theft," she said simply. "Even if it's family." I nodded. My hands had stopped shaking, replaced by a strange calm that felt almost disconnected from my body. "I want to press charges," I said. The words hung in the air between us. Officer Martinez looked at me carefully, not with judgment but with understanding. "Are you sure?" she asked. "This will have consequences for your family relationships." "I'm sure," I said. "My family clearly thinks they can make decisions about my life and my property without asking. Maybe they need to understand there are consequences for that too." She nodded and made more notes. Within an hour, more officers had gone to Jennifer's house. I waited at home, having called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. My supervisor, who had worked with me long enough to know I never called in unless it was serious, told me to take whatever time I needed. My phone started ringing at noon. First Mom, then Dad, then Jennifer herself. I didn't answer any of them. I sat in my quiet apartment, drinking tea and looking at the photos on my wall. David's graduation, his mother's smile. My parents at their 50th anniversary party 2 years ago, when everything still felt normal. When had normal become letting other people decide what I deserved? The knock came at 3 in the afternoon. Through the peephole I saw Jennifer standing there, her face red and tear-stained. She was 48, my younger sister by 5 years. She had always been the one who needed help, the one who made impulsive decisions, and then looked to the family to fix the fallout. I opened the door but didn't invite her in. "Robert, how could you?" she said immediately. "The police came to my house, in front of my neighbors, in front of my children. You stole my car," I said calmly. "Mom and Dad gave me the key. I didn't steal anything. It's not their car to give away," I said. "It's mine. My name is on the title. My money paid for it. You took it without my permission. That's theft. But I needed it, she said, as if this was an argument that made sense. My van is falling apart. I have to drive the kids to school and soccer and… Then you should have asked me, I interrupted. You should have called and said, Jennifer, I'm in a difficult spot. Can we talk about transportation options? But you didn't. You conspired with Mom and Dad to take something that belonged to me. You're being selfish, she spat out. You've always been selfish. Ever since Sarah died, you've been in your own little world, not thinking about anyone else. The mention of my wife's name after 15 years still hit like a punch to the chest, but I kept my face steady. Don't, I said quietly. Don't you dare use Sarah to justify this. The kids need stability, Jennifer continued, crying now. I'm trying to give them a good life after the divorce, and you're pressing charges against me like I'm some criminal. You committed a crime, I said. The police officer explained it to me very clearly. Just because we're related doesn't make it not a crime. I'll return the car, she said desperately. I'll bring it back right now, just drop the charges. The car is already impounded as evidence, I told her. The police took it from your driveway. Her face crumpled. You're destroying this family. No, I said, and my voice was stronger now. I'm setting a boundary. There's a difference. I closed the door gently but firmly. Through the wood, I could hear her crying in the hallway for a few minutes, before her footsteps finally retreated. That evening, David called. Dad, he said, Grandma called me. She's hysterical. She says you're pressing charges against Aunt Jennifer? I took a deep breath. David deserved the whole truth. Your aunt took my new car without asking, I explained. Grandma and Grandpa gave her my spare key. They decided I didn't need the car as much as she did, so they just took it. There was silence on the other end. Then, they took your car? The one you'd been saving for? Yes, the one you literally showed me pictures of every week while you were shopping for it. That's the one. Another pause. And they're mad that you called the police? Very mad. I heard David sigh. Dad, I love Grandam. And Grandpa. And I love Aunt Jennifer, but that's messed up. That's really messed up. I know, I said quietly. Are you okay? He asked, and I could hear genuine concern in his voice. That question, simple as it was, nearly broke me. I had spent so much of David's childhood being strong, being the stable parent who had everything together. Even when I was falling apart inside after losing Sarah, I had held it together for him. I don't know, I admitted. I feel like I should be angrier than I am. But mostly I just feel sad. You're allowed to be angry, Dad. You're allowed to be sad. They violated your trust. When did you get so wise? I asked, smiling despite everything. I had a pretty good teacher, he said. Look, I can take some time off work and come stay with you for a few days if you need me. No, I said quickly. You have your life. I'll be fine. Dad, David said firmly, you spent 18 years putting your life on hold for me. You can let me be here for you for a few days. I felt tears welling up then, the first ones since the morning. I'd like that, I whispered. I'll book a flight tonight, he said. I'll be there tomorrow. After we hung up, I sat in the quiet apartment and let myself cry. Not harsh, angry sobs, but quiet tears of exhaustion and grief. Grief for the family dynamic I thought I had. Grief for the trust that had been broken. The next day, the legal process moved forward with bureaucratic efficiency. My car was returned to me from the impound lot. Jennifer was formally charged with unlawful use of a vehicle. Mom and Dad were charged as accessories. My phone continued to ring with calls I didn't answer. Voicemails piled up, ranging from pleading to angry to manipulative. How can you do this to your own mother? You're going to regret this when we're gone. Jennifer's children are crying every night. Are you happy now? I deleted them all without listening to the end. David arrived that afternoon, walking into my apartment with the same worried expression he used to have when checking on me during those first dark years after Sarah died. Hey Dad, he said, pulling me into a hug. We ordered Chinese food and sat on the couch, and I told him everything. Not just about the car, but about years of smaller incidents. The time Mom had volunteered me to lend Jennifer $5,000 without asking me first. The time Dad had given away my vintage record collection to a church sale because he didn't think I listened to them anymore. The constant expectation that I would simply accommodate whatever Jennifer needed because I was more stable. Why didn't you ever say anything? David asked. Because they're my parents, I said. Because Jennifer is my sister. Because that's what family does, right? We help each other. There's a difference between helping and being taken advantage of, David said. You taught me that. Remember when I let my college roommate use my credit card and he ran up $2,000 in charges? I smiled slightly. I remember. And I remember telling you that generosity without boundaries isn't generosity, it's self-destruction. Right, David said. So why doesn't that apply to you too? I didn't have a good answer for that. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks later. My lawyer, a sharp woman in her 60s named Patricia, whom I'd hired on the recommendation of a coworker, explained what would happen. They'll likely offer a plea deal, she said. Your sister will probably get probation and have to pay restitution. Your parents might get community service. I don't want them to go to jail, I said quickly. They won't, Patricia assured me. This is a first offense for all of them, and ultimately the property was returned. But Robert, I have to ask, what do you actually want out of this? I thought about it for a long time. I want them to understand that what they did was wrong, I said finally. I want them to take responsibility. I want an apology that actually acknowledges the harm they caused, not just an apology that says, sorry, you're upset. Patricia nodded. That's reasonable. But I need you to understand that the legal system can enforce consequences, but it can't force people to genuinely understand or change. That has to come from them. I knew she was right. The day before the hearing, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Robert? It was my uncle, my dad's brother. Uncle Frank had always been the most level-headed person in the family. I heard about what happened. I assume you heard their version, I said carefully. I did, he admitted. And then I asked some questions and I got the real story. I want you to know that what they did was wrong. Dead wrong. I felt my throat tighten. Thank you for saying that. Your dad is my brother and I love him, Uncle Frank continued. But sometimes he gets these ideas about how things should be, and he doesn't think about how they actually are. He's decided Jennifer needs more help than you do, and that's become his whole worldview. I've been helping Jennifer for 20 years, I said quietly. I've loaned her money I never got back. I've babysat her kids. I've given her furniture and clothes and advice. I've never said no to her. And that's the problem, Uncle Frank said gently. You never said no, so they never learned where the line was. Now you've drawn a line, and they're shocked that it exists. Am I wrong? I asked, hating how uncertain I sounded. No, son, he said firmly. You're not wrong. You're setting a boundary that should have been set years ago. We talked for O.V. An hour. Uncle Frank shared stories about my dad's childhood, about how their mother had played favorites and how it had shaped my father's view of family dynamics. He didn't excuse the behavior, but he gave it context. Will you testify at the hearing if I need you? I asked before we hung up. I don't think it'll come to that, he said. I'm working on your dad. Give me a little time. 2 days before the scheduled hearing, my lawyer called. They want to meet, she said. Mediation. All parties present facilitated discussion. They're willing to admit wrongdoing if you're willing to drop the charges. My first instinct was to say no, but I thought about what I actually wanted. Jail time? Criminal records? Or acknowledgement and change? I'll do it, I said. But I have conditions. The mediation took place in a conference room at the courthouse. It was oddly neutral territory, all beige walls and fluorescent lights. Jennifer sat on one side with her lawyer, Mom and Dad beside her. I sat opposite with Patricia. The mediator, a calm older man named Mr. Reynolds, explained the process. This is a space for honest communication, he said. Mr. Robert Chen has agreed to consider dropping charges if certain conditions are met. Let's start by having each party explain their perspective. Jennifer spoke first, her voice shaky. I needed a car, she said. My van was breaking down constantly, and I couldn't afford repairs. I have 3 kids who need to get to school and activities. When Mom said Robert had a spare key and he wouldn't mind helping family, I thought it would be okay. Did you ask Robert directly? Mr. Reynolds asked. No, she admitted, but Mom said he'd understand. Mrs. Chen? Mr. Reynolds turned to my mother. Mom looked smaller than I'd ever seen her. She was 76, and suddenly I could see every year on her face. I thought I was helping both M. Why, children, she said quietly. Robert has always been so independent, so capable. He raised David alone. He has a good job. He doesn't ask for anything. Jennifer struggles more. I thought Robert wouldn't mind sharing. But you didn't ask him, Mr. Reynolds said gently. No, Mom whispered. I was afraid he'd say no. That admission hung in the air. She was afraid I'd say no, so she didn't give me the choice. Mr. Chen, the mediator turned to my dad. What's your perspective? Dad crossed his arms. Even now, even here, he looked defensive. Family takes care of family, he said. Robert has more than he needs. Jennifer needed help. That's the end of it. Mr. Chen, Patricia interjected. Your son saved for 4 years to buy that car. He worked extra shifts. He made sacrifices. And you gave it away without his consent. Do you understand that's theft? It's not theft when it's family, Dad said stubbornly. Yes, Patricia said firmly, it is. That's exactly what it is. Mr. Chen, Mr. Reynolds said to my father, Robert has agreed to consider dropping charges. But he has conditions. Would you like to hear them? Dad looked at me for the first time since we'd sat down. I met his eyes steadily. I'll hear them, he said. I took a deep breath. Patricia and I had prepared this carefully. First, I said, I want a formal written apology from each of you that acknowledges specifically what you did wrong. Not sorry I upset you. An apology that says you understand you violated my trust and my rights. Jennifer nodded immediately. Mom's eyes filled with tears. Dad's jaw clenched. Second, I continued. Jennifer will pay me $200 a month for the next year as restitution. Not because I need the money, but because actions have consequences. That money will go into a college fund for her children. Jennifer looked surprised, then started crying. Third, I said. Looking at my parents, we're going to family counseling, all of us. For at least 6 months. We're going to work with a professional to establish healthy boundaries and communication. I'm not going to therapy, Dad said immediately. Then I don't drop the charges, I said simply. Those are my terms. Mr. Reynolds let the silence sit for a moment. These seem like reasonable requests, he said. They focus on accountability and rebuilding the relationship. What do you think? Jennifer spoke first. I'll do it. All of it. Robert, I'm so sorry. I convinced myself it was okay because Mom said it was, but I knew deep down it wasn't. I should have called you. I should have asked. Her apology sounded genuine. I nodded. Mom? I looked at my mother. She was crying openly now. I'm sorry, honey. I'm so sorry. I thought I was being a good mother to both of you, but I wasn't. I was making decisions that weren't mine to make. I was putting Jennifer's comfort above your rights, and that was wrong. I felt my own tears starting. We'll do the counseling, Mom said, looking at Dad. Both of us. Dad sat rigid for a long moment. Then he seemed to deflate. I don't understand how it came to this, he said, and for the first time he sounded lost rather than angry. I thought I was teaching you both about family loyalty. Dad, I said gently, loyalty can't come at the expense of respect. You can't teach me to be loyal to people who don't respect me. He looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw something shift in his expression. I didn't respect you, he said slowly, like he was discovering this truth as he spoke it. I saw you as the strong one who didn't need anything, and I didn't respect that you had needs too. Yes, I said simply. I'm sorry, he said, and his voice cracked. I'm sorry, son. We all sat there crying, this broken family in a courthouse conference room, trying to find our way back to each other. The charges were dropped later that week. Jennifer started her payment plan, always texting me when she'd deposited the money, often with updates about her kids. Mom called once a week, respecting the boundaries we'd established in counseling about not dropping by unannounced or making decisions about my life. Dad was quieter, but he showed up to every counseling session. Sometimes he argued with the therapist, but he kept showing up. David flew back to visit 6 months later. We all gathered at my parents' house for dinner, the first family gathering since the mediation. It was awkward at first, everyone carefully polite. But then Jennifer's youngest, my nephew Marcus, asked if he could see my car. Uncle Robert, Mom says you have a really cool car, can I see it? I looked at Jennifer, who blushed but nodded encouragingly. Sure, buddy, I said. Come on. We all trooped outside, and I showed Marcus the sedan. He was 9 years old and thought anything with 4 wheels was amazing. It's silver like a spaceship, He declared, "You think so?" I asked, smiling. "Yeah, can I sit in it?" I looked at Jennifer again. She smiled, a real smile. "Go ahead," I said, unlocking it. Marcus climbed into the driver's seat, pretending to steer and making engine noises. His siblings joined him, all 3 kids piled in the front, laughing and playing. Jennifer stood beside me. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for the college fund, for not letting me get away with it, for the counseling." "Thank you." "You're welcome," I said. "And Jennifer? Next time you need help, just ask me, really ask me. Give me the choice to say yes." "I will," she promised. "I'm learning. We're all learning." Inside, I found Dad in the kitchen, organizing things that didn't need organizing. His nervous habit. "Dad," I said. He turned, dish towel in hand. "Thank you, Fo." "Are coming to counseling," I said. "I know it's not easy for you." He nodded slowly. "That therapist is pushy," he said, but there was a hint of humor in his voice. "She made me do homework last week." "Homework? I'm 79 years old. What kind of homework?" "Had to write down 3 times I made decisions for you or Jennifer without asking. Couldn't stop at 3. Had to use 2 pages. We both smiled sadly at that. "I'm sorry I needed a police officer to get your attention," I said. "I'm sorry you had to call one," he replied. "I'm trying to do better, Robert. I don't always understand all this feelings talk, but I'm trying." "That's all I ask," I said. He pulled me into a hug, brief and awkward, but real. The evening ended with Mom's famous apple pie and David telling stories about his job that had us all laughing. It wasn't perfect. There were still awkward moments and careful subjects we avoided, but it was honest. It was real. As I drove home that night in my silver sedan, the one I'd saved for and fought for, I thought about what the therapist had said in our last session. Sometimes love requires us to let people face consequences. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do is stop enabling and start expecting better. I had spent so much of my life trying to be helpful, trying to be the one who didn't need anything. After Sarah died, I had poured all my energy into raising David and being there for others. I had forgotten that I was allowed to have boundaries. I was allowed to expect respect. The car had been the line I didn't even know I needed to draw. But once I drew it, everything else became clearer. 3 months later, Jennifer called me on a Saturday morning. "Robert? My transmission is making a weird noise. Could you take a look at it? Or if you're busy, could you recommend a good mechanic?" Such a simple question, such normal communication. But it meant everything. "I'm busy this morning," I said. "But I can come by tomorrow afternoon if that works." "That would be great," she said. "Thank you for being honest about your schedule." "Thank you for asking," I replied. These small moments of respect and communication, this was what healing looked like. Not dramatic, not perfect, just people trying to do better by each other. David called that evening, like he did every Sunday. "How's everything, Dad?" he asked. "Good," I said, and meant it. Better than good, actually. "I'm thinking about signing up for that woodworking class I mentioned. The one you've been talking about for 2 years? That's the one." "Dad," David said warmly, "I'm proud of you. For all of it. For standing up for yourself. For being willing to forgive. For finding the balance." "I had a good teacher," I said, echoing his words from months ago. "We taught each other," he replied. After we hung up, I sat on my balcony with a cup of tea, watching the sunset. My silver sedan gleamed in the parking lot below, right in my spot under the oak tree. It was just a car. But it had become so much more than that. It was a symbol of my right to make choices about my own life. It was a reminder that I could love my family and still have boundaries. It was proof that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable dysfunction. I thought about Sarah, gone 15 years now but still present in so many ways. She would have been proud of me, I thought. She always said I was too accommodating, that I needed to learn when to say no. I finally learned, I whispered to the evening air. The next week, I started the woodworking class. The week after that, Jennifer's kids came over for dinner, planned in advance, with everyone respecting everyone else's time. Mom and Dad took the counselor's suggestion and started having date nights again, remembering how to be a couple, and not just parents trying to manage adult children. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. We still had disagreements. Dad still sometimes forgot and tried to make decisions for us. Jennifer still sometimes struggled with boundaries. Mom still worried too much about everyone. But we were communicating. We were respecting each other. We were being honest instead of avoiding conflict until it exploded. One evening, several months into this new dynamic, all of us were gathered at a restaurant for Mom's birthday. Jennifer's kids were coloring on their placemats. David had flown in as a surprise. Mom and Dad sat close together, holding hands. Looking around the table, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace, not the absence of problems, but the presence of people willing to work through them together. People who were learning to respect each other's autonomy while still being family. Jennifer caught my eye across the table and smiled, a real smile, not tinged with resentment or guilt. I smiled back. Sometimes the hardest thing and the right thing are the same thing. Sometimes love means enforcing consequences. Sometimes family means having the courage to say no. This isn't okay, even when it's difficult. And sometimes a stolen car is the catalyst that forces everyone to finally be honest about the dysfunction that's been building for years. Would I have chosen this path if I'd known how hard it would be? The confrontation, the legal system, the painful honesty in counseling sessions? Yes. 1,000 times yes. Because on the other side of that difficulty was something precious, a family relationship built on mutual respect instead of obligation, on honest communication instead of assumed accommodation, on love that included boundaries instead of love that demanded sacrifice of self. My silver sedan sits in my parking spot every night now. Just a car, but also a daily reminder that I'm allowed to have things that are mine, to make decisions about my own life, to expect respect from the people who claim to love me, and that's worth more than any vehicle could ever be worth. As I drove home that night after Mom's birthday dinner, with David in the passenger seat, and all of us planning the next family gathering, with everyone's schedules respected and everyone's input valued, I felt genuinely grateful. Not for the theft, not for the pain, but for the transformation that came from finally standing up for myself, and for the family that chose to rise to meet that challenge. Instead of walking away, we're all learning, we're all growing, and we're doing it together, with respect and honesty as our foundation. That's all I ever wanted. If this story touched your heart or made you think about the boundaries in your own life, please consider hitting that like button and sharing it with someone who might need to hear it. Subscribe to hear more stories about real life, real struggles, and the courage it takes to stand up for yourself while still loving your family. And please, leave a comment below. I'd love to hear about your own experiences with family boundaries and how you've navigated these difficult situations. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today.